Interview is being taped at the home of Kathleen Keazer on North Main Street in Colebrook, New Hampshire, on Friday, October 20th, 2000. The interviewer is Joan Walsh. Now, Kathleen, let's start right off. Where were you born?
I was born on the Hughes Road in Colebrook, February 27th, 1919. I was number 13.
In the family. And who were your parents?
I was born, my parents were Thomas Hughes and Marion Hartshorn Hughes.
And what was your position in the family?
I was number 13.
The baby.
The baby. 9 boys and 4 girls.
Can you name your other siblings?
Arthur, Harold, Wendell, Glenn, Minnie, Homer, Theodore, Stuart, Charles, Marguerite, Richard, and Virginia.
And where did you live at that time?
I lived on the farm until 1935. And when I was a junior, we moved to Bridge Street in Colebrook. And Brother Ted and his wife took over the farm.
Now, where on Bridge Street did you live?
We lived upstairs in the house now owned by Leona Gray.
Mm-hmm. And then later on you were in other spots on Bridge Street as well.
No, other spots in Colebrook.
In Colebrook. Mm-hmm.
And then in the 30s, later 30s, we moved back to downstairs in the same house.
In Leona's house,
Uh-huh.
Leona Gray's house, right? Where you had started off on the second floor.
It was owned by Margaret Butler.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the death of your father. When did he die?
My father died when I was only 4. I was just going to be 4, in 1923.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother lived with us until 1953.
Mm-hmm. And what was your connection to the owners of the Colebrook house?
My grandfather, Charles Hartshorn, and my grandmother, Ada Hartshorn, owned the Colebrook house with their son-in-law prior to 1930.
Mm-hmm.
It was always a treat. She would have one of us at a time down to eat in the dining room at the Colebrook house.
Can you tell us about your education? Did you go to a one-room school?
I went to the Brackett School up on South Hill.
Mm-hmm. Did you come into town later?
Yes, I went up there through the 6th grade. Came down to Colebrook Elementary School for my last 3 years, and we had to pay tuition then to come from out of town into Colebrook. We had to pay $60 a year to come into Colebrook. And then I was in Colebrook Academy from 1932, and I graduated in 1936.
And did you go to school beyond high school?
In the fall of 1936, I went to Concord Business College, where I worked for my board and room in a home.
How many years were you there?
Actually, I wasn't there years. I was there from September, and in March, I got a chance to come to Colebrook and work in the public service company.
So you came back young?
I left college, came back there.
Okay. Now, your family is kind of split religion-wise. Can you tell us about that? How did that happen?
Well, my mother was a convert. My father was a Roman Catholic, and my mother was a convert, and through the years, some of us gave up entirely or went to another. As they married somebody, they might have gone to their church. One amusing thing was when I was we used to have to go to catechism in the summer to be confirmed. And I went one day. You were supposed to wear a hat in a Catholic church.
Oh, at that time you had to, yeah.
I went one day without a hat, and the priest had me wear his hat, which was a hard straw hat. Kids would all turn around and laugh at me.
Oh, dear.
But I've stuck with the Catholic Church, was married in it, and brought up my children. Then they didn't all stay with it,
But yeah, is Brandon a Catholic also?
No,
He's not. Yeah. Tell us about meeting Brandon. Were you high school sweethearts?
no, we weren't. We knew each other in high school.
Yeah.
But I went with another Keazer boy when I was in high school. I started going steady with Brandon in 1937 when I returned home.
From Concord. Yeah.
Our first date, though, was at a Thanksgiving dance in the old town hall.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's great. Now, a little bit about Brandon. I won't get into it too much, but I wanted to ask you a few things. Was Brandon from an old Colebrook family?
Yes, he was. His father, Tom Keazer, and his mother, Eva Cook Keazer, lived on the Keazer farm in East Colebrook.
Mm-hmm.
East Colebrook.
And was Brandon, or is he a brother to Bill and Louisa?
Well, I'll name his siblings for you. The oldest was David, Louisa, Sims, James Jr., that's Bill, later called Bill, Annie Page Smith, and Carolyn Keazer.
Mm-hmm. Now, was Brandon the youngest of the family? Or?
No.
Carolyn was the youngest. Carolyn was the youngest.
He was number 4.
Mm-hmm. Now, can you tell us when you were married?
We were married August 25th, 1941, at North Stratford. Brandon always laughingly said we were married in the woodshed. Married in the priest's office in North Stratford.
In North Stratford, yeah.
And that was while he was in the service. So. And at the same time, did you have the children?
I had the children next. Yeah. Can you tell us about your children?
Oldest is Brenda, and Hugh, Gregory, and Rosemary.
I'd always thought that Hugh was the oldest, but it wasn't. It's Brenda.
Then we had Mary Margaret was born and lived just 2 days.
Mm-hmm. So you would have had 5 altogether. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Where did you live at the beginning of your marriage?
I lived with my mother in Stuart while Brandon was in the service. And he was in over 4 years.
He was. Yeah. 1941 to
41. He was in the U.S. Army from 1941 to 1945. And he was in the Pacific Theater for a whole year.
Yeah, so he was gone a long time. Yeah. And where did your mother live and Stuart live at that time? On Main Street, wasn't it?
We were living downstairs in that house on Bridge Street during the war.
During the war?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it wasn't the same house. When did you come to this house?
We moved here in 1951. I had here that you asked me about Brandon's work.
Yeah, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when Brandon came back from the service, he worked at the creamery?
Yes. He worked at the creamery before he went in the service, and he worked 43 years for the milk company.
What milk company was that?
Well, it started out to be New England Dairies, I think. It changed names several times through the years, and at the end, they merged with other companies.
Was it at one time the Hood Creamery?
No,
never that.
See, there was 3 creameries at the time, and his was started by a group of men in Colebrook.
Oh, I
see. I think Carl Edwards was the head of it. And he went, just as we started going together, he was transferred over to Island Pond. He had to learn some of the procedures of the creamery.
Yeah.
And then he came back to Colebrook.
You had already told me that Brandon was in World War II overseas and in the service for 4 years.
He was later plant manager, and when he retired after 43 years, that included his time in the service too.
Oh, that was nice.
They gave him that.
They gave him that. I think they did those things, didn't they then? Yeah.
He was a field man then at that time. He had to travel into Vermont and all over.
So he worked for them for 43 years?
Yeah.
Gee. Those were the days when people had long careers with one company, which they don't seem to do anymore. They hop from one to another, don't they? Yeah.
At the very end, he had they moved the plant. They gave up the plant in Colebrook, and he had the office was here in our house.
Oh, yeah. Now, is there anything else you'd like to say about his years with the creamery? Before we switch to the Keazer cabins, which we're going to do right now.
That's fine.
Okay. Can you tell us about the cabins? Did you and Brandon build these cabins?
Well, when we moved to this present location, there was a greenhouse here. Robert Hallberg was running a greenhouse. He had 2 years to remove it, and when he did, we had a 2-story building that they worked in with the flowers. And we had that building, so that's how we had to build the cabins.
I see, but you two built or had the cabins built?
Brandon worked on them, and his father, Kathleen Keazer, and a man by the name of George Capon built the first two.
I've heard that name too. Yeah.
They built the first two in 1953. And then the following year, Brandon built one himself. And he skipped a year. And in 1956, he built the biggest one.
So you have had 4 in all. 4. Are they all housekeeping? Were they all housekeeping
all
cabins?
All but one were housekeeping. And through the years, the different family members worked in the cabins for us, and a lot of different girls in town worked for us. We made a lot of good friends in the cabin. People that came back year after year.
Did you have many returnees?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
I bet you did. Yeah, I bet you did. And did you do any feeding of the people, like breakfast or anything like that? You didn't do anything?
They could get their own meals in the cabin.
But the one that wasn't completely housekeeping, how about that one?
People would, just bring up a picnic box sometimes.
Yeah, but you didn't have to feed any of them.
No.
Yeah, I wondered about that. Were you folks connected with any other set of cabins here in town? For instance, the Stowe cabins across the road. Did you have any connection with them? No. You're just your own. Yeah. And how many years in all did you run the cabins?
43 years.
Oh, that's okay.
53 until 98.
Yeah.
We ran them in 98. That was the last year.
That was the last year, yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the cabins?
No, I think I just told you we made a lot of friends.
Yes. And, now, you've since sold them. Have you sold all 4 cabins?
We've sold them all to one person to be moved in the spring. They have until July 1st.
Do you mind telling us who those people are?
No, Angel and Stephen Smith. Actually, she's Angel
Hartland Smith. Yeah.
They plan to operate them off on Route 145.
Now, this would be in Pittsburgh?
No. It would be in Stewartstown.
Stewartstown. And they by the July 1, you say they'll have.
They have until July 1st.
July 1st to move them.
They think they'll move them probably in May.
As soon as the ground is.
As soon as they can use the roads with that heavier.
Yeah. Will they have enough space up where they are?
Yes, they bought the Kaffenberg cabin up in Stewartstown.
Oh.
And the Ray Placey Farm.
The Ray Placey Farm.
Yeah, has a pond.
Yes.
And that's why they plan to.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I think of Ray. Yeah, I don't think of Ray Placey's farm being out in Stewartstown, but apparently it is.
This is Ray Senior.
Ray Senior. It was a different piece of land then.
Yeah. Ray Jr.'s
father. Yeah. I was thinking in terms of Ray Jr. because I know that their house, the seniors lived in a house on their farm, but this is a different location that you mean. Yeah. So that's all you want to say about the cabins?
I think it is, yes.
Okay. Now, you worked for the Giffords, Marjorie and Herbert Gifford at one time. How long did you work for them?
I worked for them from 1970 until 1978, maybe prior to 1970. Yeah, 10 years.
10 years for them. What were your responsibilities at their office?
I was a receptionist and bookkeeper. And actually everything. He did laboratory work, cleaning up.
I bet you did. Yeah. In any little place, you always have more than one job.
Funny thing, one time, Dr. Brungut came in for a shot because he worked on an animal that was suspicious,
Yeah.
And he came in and I said, "Oh, you're too late." No, the nurse has gone home. He says, "Come on, you're going to give it to me."
And he told you how to do it?
Yeah, he got it out,
Yeah.
Because he could have given it to himself, but he had me do it. He said, "You throw it just like you do a dart." So the next day I said to Brandon, "Did you see Dr. Gifford around today?" And he said, "Yeah." I wondered if he was all right.
Oh, Dr. Brungut, you mean? Yeah, Dr. Brungut, yeah. Very much alive. Yeah. What can you tell us about your remembrances of World War II? Now, you were living, how about the home front? You were living on here.
I was living with my mother and Stuart, and I've got here that World War II was a long, lonesome time. Brandon was stationed at Fort Devens, Mass. For 3 years, he was in the medics. Being a laboratory worker at the creamery, they put him in the medics.
So he saw some action in that way in the South Pacific.
Yes, he did in the medics.
Yeah.
He was 3 years as near Holbrook as he could be, Fort Devens.
So
travel back and forth. He was in Rockland, Illinois, when Hugh was born in 1944. When he was in California, being prepped to go to the Pacific Theater, he contracted spinal meningitis, and at that time it had been fatal.
Yes,
but they had the sulfur drug. And
he was not allergic to sulfur then.
Well, he has been since.
He has been since.
Well, I got the word, and Ernest Cadd was the home service. He was home service representative for the Red Cross, and he got me a priority because you couldn't travel on the plane then.
That's right.
Or anything that was important. He got me a priority, and I flew from Portland, Maine, out to Sacramento, California.
Yeah.
And I was out there 9 days, and he recovered, and I came back home.
Gee, that was great that he did recover, and no after effects that were bad.
Well, they gave him just a month off after that, and then they shipped him overseas.
They did, yeah.
And he was over in New Guinea, the Philippines. And at the end, he went to Japan before the war.
He saw quite a bit of the Pacific, didn't he? South Pacific, at any rate.
Yes, he was scheduled to fly into Japan by airborne, but then they signed the armistice. He just went in as an actor.
Yeah. Let me see. What do you remember of VE Day? Now, you were in Colebrook at the time.
I don't remember as much about VE Day. We must have been quite...
That was in May of 45.
We were quite relieved that we were done with Germany.
Yes,
and we still had to finish it in the Pacific Theater. I remember mostly VJ Day because it was such a happy time, and we all get out. We pushed our babies in the carriages and up street and banged pans. And everybody was very happy.
How many children did you have at that point?
2.
Brenda and Hugh. Yeah.
It was a very happy day.
How soon after VJ Day was Brandon able to come home?
VJ Day was in August.
Yeah.
And he was discharged in November. Of
45. Where was he in the meantime?
That must have been the same year he was discharged.
Yeah. Sometimes they send them to an interim place.
Yeah, he had quite a lot of... They discharged him according to how many points for different things. And he had a pretty good... So he was discharged in November of that year.
In November of 1945. From where? Do you know what the Army installation he was discharged from?
Must be Fort Devens.
Fort Devens, Mass.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
'Cause I went down and met him in Manchester.
Uh-huh.
When he got out.
Yeah, yeah. Gee, that was a long time to be away. Really long. Did he get much leave time from the beginning to the end before he went overseas?
No, he used to have weekends off. You know, he drove
Good.
home quite a bit when he was
Mhm.
at Fort Devens.
Yeah,
But then he got out in the Midwest and out to California now.
yeah, yeah.
This is
Mhm.
the subject we're talking about.
Yeah. Let's see now. Do you think that's all you want to say about World War II? Anything else you can think of that you might like to record?
I guess that's about it.
You think that's about
Everybody
it?
was in the same boat at that time.
That's true.
You know,
Yeah.
you must
So
have been down where you were.
Yeah. Well, see, I wasn't married till after World War
Oh,
II.
I see.
I was engaged, but broke the engagement, so I didn't marry Tom till later. Now, getting on to a few other things. After the war, were you active in the Legion Auxiliary?
Yes, I was treasurer for a while in the Legion Auxiliary and then president.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was also president of the Catholic Women's Club.
Later on,
And I said, you asked me if I belonged to any other.
Yeah.
I now attend to Forever Young,
Uh-huh.
which is an exercise group at the Congregation Church.
And you enjoy that?
Yeah.
Let's see. Were you in some of those Legion shows?
No, I wasn't. Thinking of it, I must have been pregnant all the time. That's why I was.
I've seen some pictures. I don't remember seeing your picture in
I
there.
wasn't in them. I think I was pretty busy, either pregnant or with 3 children.
Yeah,
you know, By then we had Greg in 47.
Yeah.
And we lived upstairs in Kenneth Oliver's house then.
Okay, now that was down here on North Main Street?
The Ivor Drew house.
Ivor Drew house.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's where somewhere I've got it here. That's where we first kept house. Was upstairs.
Ken Oliver's.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
then you came from there up here?
And we had Greg and Rosemary while we lived there.
Uh-huh.
So we had 4
for when you moved up here, right? Yeah. Now, moving on to the Vietnam War. Were your sons in the Vietnam War?
Greg was active in the Vietnam War. He went over into something 68. He wasn't in very long before he was wounded badly. He had a lot of shrapnel wounds.
Yeah.
And
was he in that Tet offensive?
Yeah.
In 1968?
Tet,
yeah. Yeah.
And I got word that he was seriously injured. And if it hadn't have been for helicopters to get him right out of that, he wouldn't have lived. But they flew him to. I got word from him while he was in a hospital in Japan. Somebody wrote for him. He'd been injured, badly injured. And then he was shipped to Long Island, a hospital in Long Island. And as it turned out, he recovered.
Yes, he did. He was a long time recovering, though, wasn't he? Yeah. Was Hugh in Vietnam at all?
No, Hugh was in the service. Hugh went to college and for a year, and then he was drafted. And he was over in Germany for 3 years, I think. But I don't think it was during the Vietnam War. It was early.
Oh, in between time. There was an in between period there before the Vietnam War started. Yes.
And when he came back from being in the service, he went to the University of New Hampshire.
So he graduated from UNH. Hugh did.
And Greg went for a 2-year course. So the government took care of him.
Yeah. How about the girls now? Did the girls go on to school too?
Brenda went to a dental hygiene course at University of Vermont. And she worked as a dental hygienist. And she said, why did I think I wanted to work in somebody's mouth? So she went on and got more education, and she actually went and got her master's finally.
Did she?
And she taught kindergarten and 3rd grade.
Good for her. Now, she was the one that moved out of state. She's in New York State. Yeah, and she's been there ever since she was married, has she? Yeah.
She married a a guy that was a phys ed director
Mm-hmm.
and a coach.
Mm-hmm. Where in New York State does she live?
She's just north of Plattsburgh. She's right on Lake Champlain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she still stays very active and works through the university there as a docent.
Docent. Yeah.
Docent,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she goes and tells people about things that are on display in the college.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
She gets a lot of trips that way.
I bet she does. Well, she was a people person anyway, so
Yeah.
a very outgoing friend of ours. Yeah. Yeah. And how about Rosemary now? Tell us about her.
We sent Rosemary to the University of New Hampshire, but somehow, being from a small town, she didn't like college life. She came home and got herself a job in the First Global Bank. And I think she's sorry since, but
well, she's done well though.
Yeah, she's worked the grounds of Bermuda. She's worked at the Coast County, and they contacted her to come to work at the Beecher Falls factory, Ethan Allen, as assistant to Dan Kurzman as a personnel manager. And she finally became
personnel manager herself.
Personnel manager.
Good for her. Yeah, that's a good job.
She's worked up pretty good without a college education.
Yes, it can be done.
Yeah.
It can be done, and I think sometimes small places like this are a way of getting started in it, you know. Or with a little college, you can move further on. Let's see now. Then later on, you began to go to Florida in the wintertime. When did you start that?
We first went to Florida. We used to go for visits, but we first went for any length of time in 1981 after Brandon had retired. And we went to Englewood on the West Coast, and we purchased a mobile home in a small mobile home park in 1992.
How did you happen to choose Englewood?
Betty and George LeBar were there, and it's on the ocean, but it's a small town compared to Miami or Tampa. Small town.
But is it on the West Coast?
It's on the
West Coast. Yeah.
And because of Betty and George LeBar, we went there to visit them, and then we went there and rented it first. We rented for 8 years. Before you bought.
Yeah. You obviously enjoy Florida then.
We do. It's only a 72 mobile. So, yeah. And it's just like being in Colbrook, you know.
Yeah.
You know everybody.
Yeah.
People come from all over the different parts of the United States, and they have a nice performing arts program there in the Methodist Church. And I go every week. Brandon doesn't care to go, but I go with another gal.
Yeah.
And we see some very good programs.
Yes, I bet you do. I think they're very active in Florida as far as drumming up interest for older people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting. Our only grandson plays the keyboard. And he plays with a group down around Dover. And just lately, is that one out?
No, it's still going on.
Just lately, they've got a chance to be the first ones to play ahead of the Shaw Brothers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Did you find that you had arthritis, didn't you, when you first... This has relieved your arthritis a little bit by being down there where it's warmer?
That's one reason we went, I think. One reason Brandon was willing to go to help.
Yeah. Because I've got a little bit of it, and it's not pleasant. And I think it hits you as you get older in one form or another.
Just this week when we got that real cold weather.
You noticed it? Yeah. This is still going. Can you tell me now about some of your thoughts about Colebrook? Do you think it's changed at all, and in what ways has it changed, for the better, for worse?
I'd like to say I think Colebrook's a wonderful town to bring up a family in small. There was a time when we felt we knew everybody. Now we don't.
No, you don't. No, I don't.
We're getting older. There's younger people moved in, which is good.
Yeah.
And but I've seen many changes. The only changes I don't like are some of the buildings on Main Street that are not occupied, and the owners probably find it impossible to keep them in a good
condition.
condition.
I think
the
there's a movement afoot to try and bring this Main Street in this town back. Do you feel upbeat about that? Do you think?
Well, I think it's wonderful for the younger people to be interested in doing that. It's a little bit much for us older people to get much involved. If we could help them, but I know my sister Margaret was talking with Donnie Messier, who is a teacher in Vermont. He said he's so happy that he went to Public Academy. He said he's been in many schools and he thinks it's one of the best.
That's a wonderful compliment. It really is something to take home with you.
I feel the same way. Our children all had good education.
At that time, anyway. Now we don't know whether things have changed or not, but I assume that this last year's graduating class did very well, school-wise and scholarship-wise, and so we really have a lot to be proud of in that little school. Now we're faced with the possibility of adding on or building or whatever, and that's going to be coming up at school meeting this year. There'll be a vote on that. Usually this clicks when it's ready to. It's still turning around.
You hear it?
Yeah.
I don't hear it too well.
Yeah, I hear this. Is there anything else you'd like to throw in now? We're getting towards the end of. I'm afraid I did not have the record button pressed down when I turned the other side of the cassette. But we're practically at the end of this interview, and at this point, I thank Kathleen for having me there, and thanked her on behalf of the Historical Society for having me there for the interview. And I also said that if she thought of anything else or if she wanted any corrections after she saw the finished typed version, I would certainly be happy to do it for her. But this was a profitable time spent, and I enjoyed myself thoroughly, and I hope she did. I think somewhere along the line, Kathleen has decided that she'd like to name her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren, and we never got to that in the interview. So we're going to tag on a postscript, and here she goes. Do you want to name your grandchildren, Kathleen?
Yes, Joan. When you asked me if there was anything else I wanted to add, I said no, but then afterwards I got to thinking. We have 9 granddaughters and 1 grandson and 2 great-granddaughters. So I'd like, for future, I'd like to mention them.
Would you like to say what each one does as we get to them, your granddaughters first?
Yes, I'll try to get them all in. They ranged in ages from 36 to probably 21 grandchildren. So our first granddaughter was Lisa. She's Lisa Williams, and she's the one that's 36. She's a psychologist in a school system in Greenwich, New York, right now.
Now, whose daughter is she?
She's Brenda's oldest, oldest daughter. She has a little great-granddaughter, Carolyn, and she's 10. And she goes to school where her mother teaches in Greenwich. Then after Lisa, there was Sue, and she works at the Sony, the university in Plattsburgh. Can't tell you just what she does. She has her own office, and she has just had a birthday. She has her master's degree, I know that, but I can't tell you just what she works in. After Sue, there was Molly, and Molly works in the post office in Plattsburgh. She isn't married. She has a friend, Scott, at present. He also works in the post office with her. That's Brenda's 3. Hugh has Jason, who's our only grandson, and he works in a company in Dover. He's been with them he graduated from the University in New Hampshire, and he also plays the keyboard and plays with a group. Saturday nights they play at different places, and he's been with orchestras to Europe. He's been twice over there playing.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
Yeah.
It isn't a regular orchestra he plays with, but they hire him to come and play keyboard. He dates back from my mother, who played the piano.
That's right. Yeah. And you also mentioned that your mother had played the organ in one of the churches. Yeah.
Also, his mom, Lorraine, her dad was in an orchestra way back in the early days, the Dunbar Orchestra.
So the music flows right down, doesn't it?
Both sides.
Yeah.
And after Jason, there was Annie, daughter of Hugh and Lorraine. She works in a company. I think she works with computers, but I can't tell you what. She tried college, but she didn't think college was for her, and so she's been making it in her little world without college. Then there's Greg has 3 daughters. Joanne works for the Secret Service. This season she's been with the Hillary group.
Interesting. Interesting job.
But she's going to be with the White House after election.
Yeah.
She'll be with the White House.
And she lives where?
She bought a home in Alexandria,
Virginia.
She's graduated in law enforcement, 4-year college. And after her was Shannon. Shannon's a registered nurse, and she lives in Texas. Right now, she's taking care of our second great-granddaughter, Hannah, and so she's not
working at the moment.
No, she's home taking care of Hannah. And she has a husband, Matt, who's in the Border Patrol. That's why they're on the Texas border. They'd like to be back up north.
Where in Texas is she?
Well, she's near where she's near Mission, where they lived when Greg was in. When she was a child. She's right near the
near the border.
Then there's Colleen, and Colleen is 21, I believe, maybe going on 22 in December. She's working in Miami right now. She did work at the Balsams Country Club as a waitress, but right now she's working at an airport in Miami. She didn't elect to go to college yet. She says sometimes.
It's never too late. I can vouch for that.
Then we have Rosemary's daughters, who was Rosemary and Gerard Riendo. Have 2 daughters. Rochelle is she's in Denver, Colorado, and she's in the critical care babies. She takes care of critical care babies. That's what she likes. And right now she's expecting her baby in March, so we're quite excited about that. And then there's Kimberly, and she works in Manchester. Right now she's working for a lady that has her own. She puts out tapes, and Kim took up graphics at Berlin and Lindenville, and she's working for this Snowden. I think
I've heard that name. Yeah,
she's put out a book about times, and Kim's working for her. That makes all of the 9 granddaughters, 1 grandson, and 2 great-grandchildren.
And you've included the 2 great-grandchildren in this now, haven't you? So we've got just about everybody.
So we're very happy with them, and I just wanted to record that we have them.
Yeah, and I thank you again.
Thank
and I think
Joan.
this postscript is fun.
Thank you, Joan. It was nice of you to do this.
Well, it was nice of you to have me, to give me your time.
We look forward to receiving the tape.
Okay, you bet. Okay, now let's